Hello. We are very pleased to welcome you by the YouTube channel of the Association Jean Monnet. My name is Henri Malosse. I'm the actual chairman of the steering committee of the Association Jean Monnet. And we are, in fact, very proud that we have today a debate about the defense policy. Just two words. First word to introduce you, and I think our moderator, Peggy, will make it, but to congratulate Barbara Matta, which is a brilliant master degree student of the University of Bologna, and she proposed us to write an article about what she called the Westphalian or post-Westphalian methods, principles adapted to the European policies. That means, but she will explain it, but what means uh, intergovernmental or communitarian methods applied to the defense policy. Why is it so important for us in the Jean Monnet Association? You all know who was Jean Monnet, one of the most important founder father of European institution, of European community, and he was very attached to that word community, but fortunately disappeared today in the European picture. And for him, what was important was much more than the topic. What was important was the method. The method was to identify common goal, to identify topics where the Europeans share common interest, what we call le bien commun, common, not common values, but common wealth, common interest, and identified that. The method was step by step, by concrete action, to make these activities be managed, be ruled under a communitarian way. That means when you have a couple, for example, you know it's a big difference, or you separate your asset, your house, your car, your heritage, or you decide to put that under a community. Community, that means whatever you do that in common, and that is the community method where Jean Monnet and founder father invented the European Commission, invented the body which has to be inspired by the common interest. And if you look at the defense policy, you see that since 1954, the day where unfortunately the project of European defense community was inspired again by Jean Monnet and Robert Schuman, has failed in front of the French Parliament. Since 1954, the defense policy, the military activities, even the external policy, in fact, is ruled in the European Union under the traditional intergovernmental method. That means that each government takes initiative, everything is linked with unanimity, and we have to create a consensus with each member states one by one. So not at all a federal or community approach. And we see that facing today the Ukrainian drama, the European Union has an enormous difficulty to take common positions, very complicated, very long, and we see that the major actor for that conflict after the invasion, the brutal invasion of Ukraine by Russia, the main actor is the NATO. It's not the European Union. But sad, although the European Union is probably one of the most financial contributor to the effort to support Ukraine, but politically they are the US and the NATO. So we think for us in the Jean Monnet Association that coming back to the communitarian method as it was foreseen in 1954 for the defense community European Defense Community Initiative will be the only way to have an efficient European Union active in that conflict. So this is why this study, this article from Barbara, in my view, is very important. And we are very proud in the Jean Monnet Association that we put that contribution, that idea in the debate, because when you hear in Parliament, Council, you say that almost nobody mentioned that. They all say we want to have a common defense policy, but nobody says concretely how to do it. So in the Jean Monnet Association, we are very proud because we discuss the how to do it. And we think how to do it is through the community method, but we'll have the debate now. Thank you very much. And enjoy the debate.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. So good evening, everyone. My name is Peggy Corlin. I'm a French journalist. I work mainly for Slate.fr on European issues. So indeed, how can we get out of the contradiction between intergovernmental cooperation and the EU Common Policy Project? This is the historical challenge that the EU has been facing, which has found a new relevance with the war in Ukraine. And since Russia invaded Ukraine last February, we have seen that the EU has used some common tools, but while leaving untouched the leadership of NATO for its defense. So could the Monnet method apply to the European defense policy? Will we be able one day to reach the post-Westphalian EU that Barbara Matta, who is with us tonight and that Mr. Malosse has introduced, calls for in her paper entitled The Post-Westphalian European Union Trapped in the Westphalian Pan-European Space? We're going to try to address these issues with our other guest tonight, who is Dariusz Sobkow. You are a former ambassador of the Republic of Poland to the EU. So you have taken part to the work of the COREPER, of the negotiations between the EU member states, and you are now today an advisor at the European Parliament. And Barbara Matta, so we have already introduced you. You are, just let me mention that you are a policy analyst in European affairs, and so that you wrote this paper. So maybe let's start with you so that you can introduce your thesis. Maybe you can define what is Westphalian and post-Westphalian EU and how, according to you, the war in Ukraine today holds the EU in a Westphalian state.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Could I ask you to share my slide, please? Thank you very much for hosting me here today, and a special thanks to the Association Jean Monnet that gave me this amazing opportunity to develop my research and deepen my interest in European security and defense. So here you can see the title of my paper, the Post-Westphalian European Union Trapped in the Westphalian Pan-European Space. Could you please go to the next slide? Okay, so in this slide you can see the table of content. So what I will be talking about for the next 15 minutes or so. First, as you can see, I will introduce my research question, and I will try to deconstruct the title of my thesis, so presenting the main arguments of it. Then I will move to the theoretical framework and to present to you the theoretical framework that I developed by reading the article of the most prominent scholars in this field. And then I will move to the analysis part. I will present my methodology, but also the main outcomes. And finally, I will spend some words on my research, which I think is very important because I will say also how the outbreak of the war in Ukraine affected deeply my research. Thank you. Here you can see my research question. As you can see, it's very simple. Which are the reasons behind the European inhibition in the security arena? And you can find actually part of the answer in my title. So the post-Westphalian European Union trapped in the Westphalian Pan-European space. So what I argue is that the European identity, and if you are familiar with the terminology of ontological security, the European self, meaning the European political project, as it was conceived by the founding fathers of the European Union, so Jean Monnet, Robert Schuman, Altiero Spinelli, and so on and so forth, is, or better I argue, that is post-Westphalian in nature. However, I believe that there are Westphalian forces that surround this post-Westphalian identity. So focusing more on the pan-European space, I identified mainly three Westphalian forces, which I analyze in my paper, which are the member states, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, so NATO, and also the traditional threats, meaning all the threats that we can include in the field of military and traditional security, so the security of the state, the security related to the preservation of the sovereignty and the territoriality of the state. So what I argue is therefore that these forces create together an hostile environment for the development of the post-Westphalian European project, and they make the European Union ontologically insecure. So they threaten the European identity, the European self, and hinder its attempt to act as a post-Westphalian security actor. So moving to the next slide, we have the theoretical framework, because probably not everybody is familiar with the concept of Westphalian and post-Westphalian, and so I just wanted to show you these three sentences that I believe explain really well not only the difference between Westphalian and post-Westphalian, but also why the European political project of the founding fathers was post-Westphalian in nature. So these are three phrases, three sentences that are taken from what Vincent Della Sala, scholar in this field, called the foundational narrative of the European Union. And we have the Ventotene Manifesto. You probably know it. It was written during the Second World War, in particular in 1941 by Spinelli and Rossi, and then the Schuman Declaration. So if we focus on the first sentence, the most pressing problem without a solution progress is merely an illusion, is the definitive abolition of the division of Europe into national sovereign states. What does it mean? It means that according to the founding fathers, the only way to solve the problem of war in Europe, in the European continent, was to create a union without internal borders. So to eliminate the problem of the division of the European continent into national sovereign states, which is the order that was created actually in 1648 with the Treaty of Westphalia. The other characteristic of the European political project of the origins is in the Schuman Declaration, which, as we all know, gave the start of the European integration process. And here you can see that Schuman is saying that the Union should be open to all countries willing to take part. So here we have another characteristic. The European project does not only have to be without internal borders, but also with porous external ones. So the external borders shall be flexible and porous in order for the European Union to enlarge itself peacefully and not through the use of war. And the other aspect, which is the very opening line of the Schuman Declaration, which I believe is a very important sentence, is world peace cannot be safeguarded without the making of creative effort proportionate to the dangers which threaten it. So here, Schuman is depicting the European Union as a security project. So the European Union was and is first and foremost, and this is what I argue in my paper, a security project, because if in the Westphalian world, war was not considered only acceptable, but also a legitimate instrument to solve the tension within the international system, the anarchy, if we want, in the international system, with the post-Westphalian project, the founding fathers solved once and for all the problem of war, and war not only became unacceptable but even impossible in the European continent. So if we move to the next slide, we see that the main outcomes, I tried really to summarize the outcomes of my research in this simple graph. What I argue here is that these three Westphalian forces, which are member states, NATO, and the traditional threats, are pushing the European political project of the origins back to Westphalia. So while it is easy to understand that NATO and the traditional threats are actually Westphalian forces, probably it is not clear with the member states, because there are even many authors, such as prominent authors such as James Perley, that argue that the member states are not Westphalian but post-Westphalian. So I believe that the member states are Westphalian, remain Westphalian, because they managed to preserve the control and the ability to control their national borders. And if it is not clear, saying this like in theoretical terms, I believe that the practical example, so for instance, the war in Ukraine, but even for example, if we think about the migration crisis, can actually elucidate this aspect. In fact, if we take, for instance, the example of the migration crisis, during the migration crisis of 2015, at the very beginning, the European Union issued a document, the Agenda on Migration document, you probably recalled it, and after the member states started to undertake unilateral actions and to promote rebordering actions by strengthening their external borders. And by doing so, they threaten the inner nature of the European Union, in particular the Schengen space. The European Union reacted by issuing another document, the Back to Schengen document, in which we can find another completely different narrative, which I believe is more post-Westphalian in nature. We can say the same even with respect, I believe, to the Ukrainian crisis, and in particular, if you have read it, the strategic compass. The strategic compass that the European Union issued right after the outbreak of the Ukrainian crisis is a document that I believe has nothing to do with the foundational narrative of the European Union, because we have terms such as defense and deterrence back in the European political discourse. So what I'm saying here is that the European Union is in a particular limbo between the Westphalian and the post-Westphalian, and the process is not reversible, but my feeling is that the European Union is turning increasingly more Westphalian in nature. So if we move to the next slide, I just wanted to show you the methodology. So I started by focusing on the foundational narrative to understand the European self, the European identity. Then I moved to the historical framework to reconstruct the history of the European Union, and in particular the development of the European security and defense. And here I argued that actually the beginning of the development of the European and security and defense dimension is not with the European defense community that failed, but with the first community of the European Union. So the European coal and steel community is a fully fledged security project. Then I moved to the analysis of the Westphalian forces and their impact on the European self, and finally I just focused on the European Common Army. With respect to the European Common Army, I asked to myself a question, the one that also Henri Malosse presented to you. So how could the Jean Monnet method be applied to the European defense policy, and how this method can preserve and even restore the post-Westphalian nature of the European political project. In this respect, I consider both the positive and the negative aspect of the European army. And at the end, I argue that the creation of a common European army can be an intermediate functional step in the integration process, but it shall not become, we can say, the ultimate goal, which is, I believe, the abolishment of all standing armies and the development of an international security community. I'm aware of the fact that what I argue, my thesis, my argument is some kind of absurd and probably utopistic, but I also believe that the European Union demonstrated with its European integration process that utopistic, the word utopistic does not mean impossible. And I believe that the only solution is not European. Also, Schuman in the Schuman Declaration said world peace. So we have to think, I believe, globally, because if there are actors in the international community, such as Russia and the US, that continue to act as a Westphalian actor, so if Russia, for instance, continues to use, for example, war to face international anarchy, to enlarge its boundaries, and even to demonstrate that it is still a superpower, the European Union, of course, struggles to implement its post-Westphalian instrument. So moving to my research, just a few words on this, then I finish my presentation. I started my research before the outbreak of the war in Ukraine. It was actually the week before. I gave an exam of European integration, and my professor asked me, what do you think about the creation of the European army? So from this moment on, especially after the outbreak of the war, we can say in Europe, I started to reflect a lot on European identity, on the European security and defense, on the European self, and then I started even a course of pan-European security, which introduced me to several approaches of studying security, including, for example, the collective securitization that was introduced in the academic debate by Sperling and Weber after the invasion of Crimea in 2014. Then, as I said, thanks to the Association Jean Monnet, I had this amazing opportunity to deepen my research, to develop this work. Actually, my research did not end with this paper, and I continue to study these topics for the whole semester, focusing mostly on the 2015 migration crisis, but also the big enlargement of 2004. So thank you for your attention, and I finish here my presentation.
Thank you, Barbara. So Dariusz, we would like to have your reaction, and also to know Poland is one of the leaders of the resistance to Russia. So to which extent could Poland help an EU defense policy emerge and this post-Westphalian EU that Barbara Matta is calling for?
First of all, let me remind that Poland always favorized this intergovernment platform of communication, and in Poland, Polish political class has even the slogan Nicea or muerde, so Treaty of Nice, or we can die if not, yes, referring to the famous home war in Spain in 1936, Victoria or muerte, yes, if I remember, the Republicans has this slogan, so it was adapted to Nicea. So Nicea method was very important for us. Let's remind that Poland had 27 voices on Nicea method and Nicea method of counting, and Spain also 27, and Germany, UK, and France 29. So Poland was some kind of the top 5 council most important members. And when I was in Coreper 1, it was under the Nicea period of the counting. And I can assure you that it was much more important, much more easy for Poland to negotiate having this intergovernment Nicea methods. After Lisbon has coming, and Lisbon is favorizing more or less a federal method of cooperation. Yes, even we are speaking today about this formal or informal, but transfer of some dossier from third pillar, home affairs, to the first pillar. For example, on Coreper 1, sometimes there are some like taxation or even structural question of the judicial system. It's treated on the Coreper 1. So it never happened 15 years ago, even 12 years ago. Coreper 1 was focused only on the first pillar of European Union. Today, this transfer of the competency to the first pillar from third pillar is happened. And also second pillar, so foreign affairs and of course defense policy needs to be more federal, because it's the obvious need today when we are facing the war on the east border of the European Union. And when we compare the First and the Second World War transformation of the competency, so it's obvious that this Latin formula, si vis pacem paraberum, if you want to have a peace, you should prepare yourself to the war. It will favorize the federal method of the collaboration in the second pillar, I would say. And because of the fact that sometimes we have migration problem, or sometimes very huge migration problems, some competency from the third pillar will become also more federal, more let's say European Union method, or let's say Lisbon Treaty method. In the same time, we observe, as for example, debate in the European Parliament and the composition of the new forces coming to the European Parliament, it's clear that the people's voice, the democratic election, is putting importance and favorizing the political parties who are more national. So in this scheme, let's say, more still Nice Treaty method. This intergovernment method, this possibility to say no sometimes by one country, it's very important. I cannot imagine that it will be abolished. Look, for example, the Lisbon Treaty wanted to introduce that it's not obligatory that every country has one commissioner. But at the end of the negotiation, the majority of policymakers accepted, say, no, it's very important. And of course, there was a big number of countries that we want to have our commissioner. It was not important for them which one, yes, but symbolically, every country, especially the so-called little countries, they want to be represented there and they want to participate in this independent family. So the Westphalia method of the negotiation and, let's say, this philosophy of the Westphalian peace, it's it's a few centuries, it's a 5 centuries. So I don't believe we can abolish that, and we don't need. What we can do today, I think, it's to say that the second pillar, especially defense affairs, should be submitted on this issue. Let me remind that the French colleagues will I hope will react on to what I want to say. The so-called regalian powers, the classical theory.
Dariusz, we can't hear you anymore.
Yes. Oh.
You are frozen.
I can hear him.
It's very yes. Now it's better. Is this better?
Yes, I can hear perfectly.
Okay. Please tell me, Peggy, how many minutes I still have, because as said Churchill, to speak 1 hour, I don't need to be prepared, but to speak five minutes, I need to be prepared myself 1 hour. I prepared myself. How many minutes I have? How many minutes I have?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Good, fantastic. It's a good time to conclusions. So the very classical theory of the state, it's the French traditional method of the regalian powers, yes, like defense, foreign affairs, financial and home affairs, including judicial affairs. It's something classical. It's like, architecture. We have European architecture, we have European art, and we have European philosophy of the state. Yes, and we cannot abolish that because we will abolish something European Union is based on. But our history showed that during the dangerous situation, during the time like the war or preparation of the war or the danger of the war, the Europeans are absolutely able to adapt our thinking methods to the current situation. So I think the very realistic thing is make advance on the second pillar today. Maybe not diplomacy. I don't believe that it will be possible to abolish independence on diplomatical issue. The proof is, look on external action service European. It's still dominated by national point of view of different countries. Yes, we don't have what Henry Kissinger wanted to have 40 years ago, the phone call to the European Minister of Foreign Affairs, who can deal in the name of the European Union. Commissioner, High Commissioner, representative for the Foreign Affairs, he's still not somebody who can decide in the name of all European Union's countries, even if some of them are against. He cannot say, I don't take care, I decide in the name of European Union. It's not that. So it's proof that with diplomacy, it will be very difficult. But in defense and military issue, it's possible, and it's a good momentum today. I remember very well the visit of Polish government representative, including Prime Minister, who, as I said at the beginning, always were in favor of the Nice Treaty method. But when they spoke about defense, they said there is an exception. European army, we can support that from the minimum 15 years. So even the country like Poland, who is very pro Nice Treaty method, 15 years ago, could imagine that for defense policy and European army, we can go forward. And it happened today. But look, let's look like how the things are today. This method is not, let's say, federal method with the direct danger on the east border. It's not working very well. We still have the national efforts, national help, and Poland is the champion. If we compare how many, materials and financial funds we put on the table during the war. We are the champion, but okay, we cannot be proud because we regret about this story on the east border. Anyway, we see that it's comeback today. It's the comeback of the Poland on the first line of the international affairs, but in this very dramatical situation. But it's because it's the effort of the budget of Poland, of the military sector of Poland. We are buying the tanks because our tanks are today after the east border, and it was much more easy to give our Polish tanks than waiting for the buying the tanks by other countries. Yes, so it's the reality today. The real method is the national method, because we can see that, but it's the fantastic opportunity to go forward, to prepare the documents and the decision to have better collaboration in the issue of the defense. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dariusz. Barbara, maybe a reaction. Do you share Dariusz's point of view? Are you a bit more maybe optimistic regarding the situation?
So I share completely the fact that what Dariusz said about the fact that the European defense and security is mostly dominated by the nation states, by the interest of the nation states today. And what I was saying by arguing that we are going back to Westphalia is this, that we are going to back to to be dominated to a European policy that is mostly dominated by the interest of the member states. So I agree in saying that the national interests are very important in the European policy, especially when it comes to the European security and defense, because the European security and defense is one of the main characteristics of the Westphalian state. So we can say that taking away this characteristic from the Westphalian state means that we are preventing the nation state to be fully Westphalian as it is. So we are altering the Westphalian nature of the state, and the states, of course, protect. The European states protect this characteristic. They protect the control on their borders. They protect also their the control on the security and defense. With respect to the Maastricht Treaty, because Dariusz spoke a lot about the three pillars. I believe that there was already a problem in the Maastricht Treaty, especially because talking about intergovernmental and supranational methods, the only pillar that was actually supranational was the first one, was the one that included in one package all the successful progresses that were done until that particular moment through the Jean Monnet method. And the other pillar were mostly intergovernmental, so the security pillar and the home affairs. Even the word home affairs is intergovernmental and Westphalian in nature, because we are saying, we are implying that the European Union has fixed and strengthened the borders, which is in contrast with the post-Westphalian European nature. And the other aspect that I wanted to stress, especially about the war in Ukraine, is that we can see already a difference between what happened, as I said, in 2015 with the migration crisis and now the war in Ukraine. We hosted more refugees now with the war in Ukraine, because the war in Europe is a threat that is endangering. It is in the interest, we can say, of the nation states. So they all agreed in helping the Ukrainian refugees, but in 2015 it not happened the same, and we just adopted the rebordering practices, strengthening the national borders.
Okay, Henri, you wanted to react to what Dariusz said.
Yes, in fact, I wanted to react what you said, Peggy, because you say that you comment Dariusz's presentation as pessimist, and I don't agree. I think it was very optimistic. I think on one side you have, of course, on external policy, diplomacy, it's very difficult to speak in one voice, and it's very difficult to apply on all matters of European policy, I will say, community method. But we see that facing the case of Ukraine, there is a huge majority of countries who have the same position. And concerning the army, as Dariusz said, as you see, Poland has always been in favor of a common European army, but doesn't exclude that we still have national one. But it's building up military common capacities. It's the way Jean Monnet built the economic union of the EU. We start with coal and steel, with Euratom, and then we build step by step. We don't have to have everything in common from the beginning, but we have to start. And I think, but of course, the question is, we start with what? and what we will share. I give you a very provocative example. I'm sure if tomorrow French President Emmanuel Macron says that, okay, I want European community defense policy, so I put in the basket the French nuclear capacity. I'm ready to share this French nuclear capacity as almost in a certain way the Americans do with NATO. It's more complicated, but it's a certain way. If France proposed that, I'm sure that the 26 other member states will say, Banco, thank you, we agree, and what we are ready to share. And, Poland may share some of his I would say, tanks and military capacity. So someone has to start giving something in the basket. Like in '58, Germany was forced, but put its industry, part of its industry, and France its agriculture on the basket. Someone has to start something. So I think if and this is the community spirit, not intergovernmental. This is the community spirit. For example, there is for decades that Germany asked France to share his position in the UN Security Council, to share with other EU member states, and France has always refused. So when you want to use the community method, as it was in the proposal on 01954, you have to propose something to share, and you have, of course, to bring things in the basket. So I think the Polish position is very interesting and gives me more optimism.
Yes, it was optimistic, but the way Dariusz was taking stock of the situation, he was saying that we are not yet there. Dariusz, I would like to ask you, would it be possible that a group of countries help us going towards this post-Westphalian state? I'm thinking of the Weimar Triangle, the dialogue between Poland, Germany, and France. Can it help build a supranational defense policy? Do you think that those member states could do it, could help, could play a great role, a great part?
Thank you, Peggy, for this question, because I remember when the political tension were created in 2006 and 2007 between, let's say, the biggest country of the European Union on few current issue at the time. It's not important which one, but the tension was high. I proposed to meet as the working group the ambassadors on the Weimar formula, yes? Because I said, if we agree on something between Poland, Germany, and France, the other will follow, yes? And it was the case. At that time, one meeting of the head of state of the Weimar was suspended. But in the same time, I proposed that the diplomats continue to work, and it was fantastic open of the links, political contacts, and they continue to meet on the Weimar state. But I put on the table the very concrete Coreper 1 issue, so it was economical, social issue, and we forgot that Weimar Triangle, Weimar formula was created to promote Polish accession to the EU or East European country to the EU. So this formula of Weimar was empty at that time because we already were a member of the EU. And today, I think what you propose, Peggy, we just need to transfer this idea to other policymakers and decision makers to use this formula and other like Visegrad Group or others. I remember Italian Minister of Foreign Affairs. I know it's not important who was it. I remember his name, but the most important thing, it was Italian. He proposed another formula of collaboration between Spain, Italy, and Poland. We said, and he called this second league, yes? He said, okay, the first league, we know the first three are Germany, France, and UK. Let's create the strong second league of policymakers like Spain, Italy, and Poland. It was refused by Poland. for some issue. Today I can say I was not agree with this refusal. Anyway, all kind of the...
Dariusz, I'm sorry, can you just turn on the camera because we are on YouTube too?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
So I think we should recreate a new content of this existing formula, like Weimar group, like Visegrad group, like maybe it's fantastic opportunity to Italian government with Spanish and Polish government to come back to this idea, or other formula on the what is this second pillar today, especially defense policy, yes, and why not the first point of the goal of the Weimar meetings, defense policy. It's a good momentum, yes. So it's good momentum. It's good instrument. And if we come back so many years after Poland became member of the EU, and Weimar was created to promote Polish membership in the EU, that means that this formula naturally is very, very important and very logical. Let's imagine today that France, Germany, and Poland are speaking about to share nuclear power of France. Speak, because it's so delicate issue. I think today what China proposed recently, saying let's don't speak at all about nuclear power concerning Ukraine war. Yes, it's not bad, and as you can observe, something like 12, 14 weeks, it was the silence on that, because it was position of China, who said, don't use the word nuclear power. So if I use today, I think I speak a little bit about the future. Just to finish, I want to tell you that what we said, everything today, I don't see too much of the contradiction, because what Barbara said, it was just the analyze, reminding of the facts. Yes, it's like that. And then you, Peggy, you propose what is the future. Yes, I could contribute with my experience, and Henri, Jean Monnet method as the method. So I think that there is a very common platform. But if we say something pessimistic or optimistic, it's just because the pessimist is the former optimist who saw the things, but he's repeating the same. Yes, he's repeating the same. I don't see today too much of contradiction between what said Henry Kissinger a few months ago, and he was blamed by a lot of peoples, and what said today President of France, and what say other leaders, including Guterres on the 2 months ago session of the United Nations. It's going together, yes, but it's the different point of view. But the responsibility of the war and of the world, and especially against the war position, is so obvious. I think that this nightmare starting in February 24th of the February will produce the good effect. I strongly believe on that, because it's like it's not easy. It's not easy to produce the positive effect, but I strongly believe that the war in Ukraine will create the positive effect. For example, in European Union, it could be the better collaboration on the second pillar and third pillar, for example. And the peacemakers, today we don't have too much of peacemakers. We forgot about that. We forgot about this function of the diplomacy. We were concentrated too much on the deal, on economical issue. We forgot a little bit about importance of the second pillar. And today I believe strongly that the time of the personality which existed 25, 30 years ago will come back, like during the First and Second World War. So, but today, if we stop this conflict on the east of Europe, it will be the proof the European is not so stupid as a lot of continents thinks, because we can preserve our continent, the third European, and maybe I hope no third World War, start. So we have I see that, excuse me to tell this, I see the current starting years 2023 as the high opportunity to preserve us, not to repeat the errors of the past. Yes. And the fact that this war is more or less limited to the territory of Ukraine, I see that as the opportunity. Of course, we cannot remember about the efforts, dramatical situation, and thousands of people who are dying there, and millions who should left the country. I don't need to say how it's important, the most important. And this argument should be also appreciated when we are looking the peace method of work. One of them is European method. One of them is Jean Monnet method. Thank you very much.
Well, I found interesting the fact that Peggy that Barbara referred to Schuman, saying it was also about security. And because I must admit that traditionally we always look to peace, we refer to peace. Now, of course, to have peace, you have also security is an element of peace. And in that sense, I remember the Monnet work long before he worked on European affairs. Before the Second World War, for instance, but also already in the First World War, he was working on what is necessary for having security and for winning a war. That's all what is behind it as procurement and so on. Roosevelt used his formula of arsenal of democracy. Now, is it to have more of post-Westphalian, as Barbara put it forward, confirmed of the European Union? Is it an idea? Don't we have to look more at industrial policy? Because of course, military stands upon procurement, upon also industry. And there we have seen that our industries apparently have lost in the last years. It was not yet the case some 10, 15 years, 20 years ago, a lot of the markets in the industrial field. Even before developing all the responses on European Defense Fund and so on, there was already the request for more industrial policy, also in protection towards China, in protection towards what the United States was doing and so on. So is it not important to indeed have more attention for that, investing in that sense, forgetting about the blurring between the first, the second, and the third pillar discussion, which to my amazement came back here because it's a long time ago they talked about the pillars, and it's right to talk about the pillars, but to have really more attention for this industrial policy. And in that sense, I think that what Mr. Breton and other commissioners have been doing last years, and what the Commission have been preparing is positive. It's really investing in that, and in that sense, they are leaning upon the DNA injected by the Monnet in its time. So
maybe we can ask Barbara her point of view, whether she has considered this industrial policy, industrial part, as part of the plan to reach the post-Westphalian EU.
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting point of view, a very interesting question, because actually what I believe we are missing right now in the European project is a common goal, and it is not the instrument that we use, because of course the Schuman Declaration was announcing the pooling of coal and steel, so it was more an economic cooperation between the states. So they decided to use the instruments of economy to solve a problem of security. So of course we can do so. I really believe that we have to find other means that are peaceful means and focus on, for example, industry and other problems, or for example, the strategic autonomy, to reach a strategic autonomy in the field of economy. And so I really believe that we have to find the solution in different fields that are not military security. So I think we have to go beyond the understanding of traditional security, which is itself Westphalian in nature. To do that, we have to resonate how in the way which Jean Monnet did at the time, in the way as Robert Schuman did at the time. So we have to find other instruments that can be, of course, industrial in nature. So we can cooperate in the industrial field to solve even a problem of security, because what we need today is to reconstruct the trust among the member states. We have to find a common interest. We have to go beyond the national interest. For instance, I do not believe that we can find a solution in a mere cooperation between some countries. I believe that all the countries should be involved and work on a supranational level to go to we can say reach the post-Westphalian or go back to the post-Westphalian project. So I do not believe that we can just remain on the cooperation between some states that are interested in that specific topic. But if the industrial field is a field that is, we can say, something that all the countries are interested in, and can actually reconnect the countries, recreate the trust, and the countries can find again a common goal. I believe that the industrial field, the industrial cooperation can be really useful, and of course I believe it is better to focus on peaceful means to solve the security problem of the European Union, and this is what I was saying by arguing that we have to go back to the origins of the European project, and this is what actually Schuman said, and even Jean Monnet envisaged with the Schuman Plan.
Dariusz, what do you think of this industrial aspect and way to work to reach an EU defense policy, and is it part of the method according to you?
I think that if we speak about the common industry European interest, I have impression it's already working very well, because when you negotiate the high majority of the laws concerning industry, concerning chemical products, the REACH dossier, the Chemical European Agency in Finland working on them, and so the control of the health and industrial activities, it's very high. I think that even Jean Monnet didn't expect that it will be introduced, that today in Brussels we are negotiating which kind of the product could be allowed to the production, industrial production, or not. So this method, Jean Monnet method, is already working in the first pillar. It's my conviction. The majority of law is negotiated in Brussels on industrial issue. After that, of course, the companies are free to introduce themselves on this or other country, And maybe we could say that it's too much federal on the first pillar. Sometimes it's too much federal. The proof that a lot of companies are transferring the activities on other continents. So maybe there's too much of the rules limiting the industrial activity. The result is they're going to China or other continent. I remember the famous vice chairman of the commission, Mr. Verheugen. He said this famous better regulation dossier. He said we need to cut a lot of rules limiting industrial and economical activities. But as we know, he was cut as the member of the commission, Mr. Verheugen. But he was very realistic. He was German, and he still has an institute. He's a very important figure of European Union. Because of him, the accession of the 12 countries from East Europe could happen very quickly. Without him, I think that it will be not so quickly. So the convinced European who always favorized this Jean Monnet method and had a long-term vision of the European Union, he said that concerning the economical activities, the European Union is maybe going too quickly, and maybe there is too much of the rules. This famous better regulation laws dossier was created to help industry to work better in the European Union. So I think on the first pillar, especially industry, we have today the very good collaboration, even maybe sometimes too much. One of the results of this very heavy rules concerning the economical production was Brexit. Yes, because they said, come on, it's a little bit too much. So of course it was used by other people. Maybe don't mix the Brexit issue on our discussion. It's another story. Anyway, I think that Jean Monnet, I don't know, maybe Henri Malosse should take floor. Yes. Do you think that on the first pillar issue, industry rules, the method of the creation of the rules on industry, Robert Schuman will be satisfied? Tell me your opinion. My opinion, I think, yes, he will be satisfied.
Yes, I will just take a point, but I want to raise, but it's raised also in the chat by our friend called Christophe. It's about the military, about defense industry. There is a point which is not covered by law, by rules. It's the question of public procurements, tenders, and that the fact, for example, that the French military industry, French government, French public opinion was rather angry these last years and these last months, seeing Poland and other Central European countries, but also Germany recently, prefer to buy American equipment than to buy French equipment. And they say, oh, they are not playing the European role, the famous préférence communautaire role. But I think this is a misunderstanding. And as long as we don't have a common European defense policy, and as long as we don't have as a goal to create a European army and to have a federal Europe, you can't prevent countries like Poland or even Germany now with all the investment that they will have in military industry for the next years, but they just decide this year following the Russian invasion. You can expect them to buy French or Italian or Spanish or whatever, because as long as we don't have a real common communitarian European defense policy, if you make the balance between the EU, which has quite weak common defense policy, and NATO, which is a real strong element, politically strong element to support military Ukrainian and then to protect countries like Poland, even Germany, but Poland, the Baltic countries were just at the front in facing the Russian army and the Putin system. You can understand that these countries won't resist the American pressure to buy NATO, and that means American weapons, American warplanes, submarines, and others. So this is the actual situation. We can't blame Poland, in my view. We can't blame Germany. We can blame others not to buy French, as long as we don't have a European defense policy. And then it's a vicious circus, and we won't get out as long as we continue to just have, in my view, intergovernmental cooperation in defense. Because with intergovernmental cooperation in defense, so why to buy French, and why not to buy Spanish? Why not to buy Germans? Why not to buy Americans? As NATO is the main actor. So you see that situation is rather complicated. We won't get out without, I would say, step by step, of course, changing the method for defense policy, in my view. But this comment of Christophe is very important, because it's all what's about. And I should speak I talk also to Dariusz, because this is also a real hot topic now these days. This question of purchasing this type of military equipment.
It's a good question for Dariusz. How could Poland join some EU defense industrial project?
I think we wish to do it, but there's a lot of political obstacles, yes. And I remember that, for example, on the space negotiations, it was accepted that Polish government is participating on the space project, but we need too much of the European funds to develop that. So especially today, at the current situation, it's a very good opportunity to have a common project involving Poland, because Poland today is buying a lot of military materials, yes, the flights, the tanks, and but I think, because for technological reason, we cannot wait to create now the industry. But if there is the project prepared by our partners, there will be no reason to refuse. The problem was that Poland was obligated to buy very quickly the last 2 years, a lot of materials. Then we buy even outside of EU. If there is a good proposal from military industry or European partners, and it's going together with this common EU defense policy, there will be no reason to refuse. So I think today it's we wish to have this common policy on defense and defense industry, but the reality is that we are still thinking on this post-Westphalian method, yes. Especially the war is the argument that you need to do something very quickly. If the European industry today is not, defense industry, common defense industry is not very well developed, if each country prefer to have their own military industry, it's because we are in late. We should start to do it a lot of years ago. We are paying today the price of our inactivities a lot of years ago. But it's not only the Polish government. It's you look on all, a lot of other countries. There is a problem, yes, with that. Anyway, I think if the war could be opportunity to create peacemaker rules, so one of these good result of this the war danger should be creation and maybe stimulation, financial stimulation of the military industry. And let's hope it will be, and thank you very much to speak about that, because, you know, during the council, we don't have the very precise proposal of the regulation and directive on that. Maybe we should go on this way. Yes, that we Europeans, I don't, because I'm speaking in my private personal point of view. I'm not working for the government. So, but we Europeans, we should need to have the proposal of the regulation and directive during the European Council, European Summit, because it's more or less unexisted. Yes, it's just sometimes the wish. It's proposed as the wish. It's not the very concrete. It's a very good point of the pressure on the Commission. Also, Commission can make the proposal, as usually. Why not also the European Parliament? But as we can see, it's not very active. European Commission and European Parliament are not very active on the proposal of the European defense industry. So it's like that. It's the reality. Okay, I give my opinion. You ask me my opinion, I give.
That's what we want. We want your opinion. I see that there's a Christophe, that Christophe has a question. Christophe, you have the floor.
Okay. It's just to make sure that the public asks something.
We can't hear you.
I put my... This is
okay,
okay?
We hear you, but okay, go ahead. But the sound is really low.
Do you hear me now?
Now it's perfect.
Okay. So thank you for that contributions to the discussion, and I'm personally happy that here Dariusz, from Poland's standpoint of view, that Poland is ready to work on the common European defense. But I think, you know, the problem of I would like to have your view, because we are people who are very versed in this European stuff and methods, etc., pillars. But the problem is that the public, so citizens and country politicians, they need to understand what we are talking about. And the first thing is to demonstrate the benefit of European, for me, is to demonstrate benefits and downsides of the European approach of the defense. And we cannot skip this step, because without that, you will have not public support and national support to that. So I think that I don't hear any politician explaining the reason why, okay? Because if you go to Eastern Europe, most of the people, they will say we have NATO, so why do you talk about European defense? When you are on the Western side, people are saying, okay, we are okay today with what we have. More or less in France, I have the impression that I don't hear that much in the political debate. So someone has to put that on the political agenda, not us, but the politician who has the power to do that. And then the second thing is the method, how to approach when we have agreement, right? Because we cannot decide, we can only propose a method to move forward by step, and this Monnet method is a good way to move forward. But for me, the first step, I don't know what do you think about that, is to have a political will.
So this is a question for Dariusz.
But how to create, how to put that topic on the political agenda?
Yes, Dariusz, how can we put this topic on the political agenda?
I think I answered on this question saying that we should make interest on the table of the political decision makers like European Parliament and Commission, and it's open to governments, it's open to a lot of associations, NGOs. Also I think this association, it's the public who are making the pressure on the strategical issue on European Parliament and Commission. But European Parliament is much more easy, I think, because if the government, if we are not happy of the position of the government during the council, then we can also make in evidence that the government should do it. But it's like all citizens in the democratic states. We can express our wish by contacting journalists, contacting MEPs, contacting ministers. But if it's not a case today, that means that the Europe is not prepared to that, because we are in late. It's my answer. Today we're facing situation that we are in late. Yes, we are surprised of the war a little bit. And if you are surprised of the war, it creates only the opportunity to make some correction. But immediately, every state should resolve the problem immediately with their money, their budget, because the common industrial policy project, it's for the years. Let's say it will take a lot of time, and we have so urgent issue today to resolve immediately, this month, this week, or today even, that speaking about long-term project, it's very visionary, it's very important, but it's the open way for everybody, for each kind of important policymakers institute, associations, also political parties, citizens, etc. But immediately it will be not resolved. It's my opinion. We cannot ask that the next year we'll have the regulation on the military industry.
But a question for Barbara. Yeah, the political will is the first step towards, of course, post-Westphalian EU. What do you think about what we've just heard?
Yes, I believe I totally agree with Christophe, because I was saying the same thing before. I believe that we have first to find the common goal and to work on the political will, because otherwise we cannot go further. And I believe that the war of Ukraine, as Dariusz said before, is an opportunity for the country. So, and this is my optimistic view about the future. So I believe that it is an opportunity, because we were forgetting about the war. I think we were forgetting about our origins and how the European project started to eliminate completely from the European continent the war. And now that the war is again back in the European continent, we put together once again our forces, and we are facing this common threat all together. And I believe that optimistically speaking, we can from this war rebuild the political will, and without the political will, without the trust among member states, and without a European interest, not just the national interest, I don't think that a European project anymore. I believe that we can just talk about the sum of the European member states' national responses to the crisis. So I believe that we need this political will, and optimistically speaking, I really hope that the war of Ukraine and seeing that the war is back in Europe will open the eyes of the politicians, and we will work on that.
Thank you very much. I see
Peggy,
that
if you accept, Peggy, I will just add one sentence going on the same way as Barbara.
Yeah, yes, I just have a question. Are we sure that are we sure that Webex doesn't stop at 6:30 sharp? We can go a bit. Okay, we'll see. Okay. Dariusz, go ahead.
One sentence, just to resume. Yes, and it's finished for me. As European Union will be not possible with the Second World War, and we should wait, come on, more or less 10, 15 years, it depends. Okay, 57, that means 12 years after the Second World War, we create the basic agreement on the European Union, yes, the Rome treaties. But the Rome Treaty will be not signed if the Second World War will not take place in Europe. So today I believe that what happened on the east of Europe, this Ukrainian war, will resume in few years, I hope, on the common defense policy and common defense industry as the resume of my intervention. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I see that there are two other questions, but I'm wondering whether Webex stop at 6:30 sharp. Can someone just tell me, or we can take the next questions?
I don't really know.
No,
Okay,
it's okay. We can continue.
Okay, so let's just take the last two questions and then we'll have to conclude quickly. Miguel Martin, you have a question.
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, it's perfect.
Okay, perfect. So I want to thank Barbara Matta for his presentation and also MEP Sobkow also for his comments. I think it was very fruitful meeting. And well, I just have one comment and one question. The comment goes very in line with Christoph's remark on at the end is about the political will. And of course, if today, nowadays, the times we are living and in the situation we are in Europe, we think that the countries by themselves can solve the problems they are facing is something ingenuous. I mean, no one could really believe on that. So the only way to do this is working together, following the method, the Monnet method, and being aware that only working together we can really face all these challenges, including the challenge of the war. That is not something new for us. On the other side, it's true that the European Union was and is what it is thanks to diplomacy. It's not because we are facing our force that we are strong in the war and we are well seen in the war. It's because we are using diplomacy, we are using dialogue. And I think that is also very important to remark. We should not forget about this. Sometimes we see that to have peace, you have to prepare for the war, but it is not our method work. So we have to be very careful also about that. But anyway, all the countries have the defense armies and so on, and maybe it will be much better to work together. And we have also to listen to the citizens. Maybe you know that recently there was a consultants on the future of Europe with different topics open. One of the topics was about defense and security. And the citizens, even if the aim of this consultancy of the future of Europe, this conference of the future of Europe, was not to change the treaties. At the end, is what the citizens demand. And the Commission took this demand, I mean, and listened to the citizens. And in the last speech of the President of the European Commission on the state of the European Union, I think it was in September, by the end of September, they announced a new convention on the future of Europe, especially to modify the treaties. And so there is a chance to modify the treaties, but maybe we don't have this political will. But the political will should be based on the citizens' will, because the politicians are there to represent the citizens. So my question is, how do you see this eventual new convention on the future of Europe that could take us to the reform of the treaties as an opportunity to really have an European and common defense and security policy in Europe?
Barbara, do you have what do you think of that? Do you have a comment? It will be your last comment, then we will have to conclude.
Yes, we with my colleagues participated in this conference of the future of Europe. So yeah, we really believe in the power of the citizens and in how the citizens can make a difference. And I really hope that all these proposals from the citizenship can really found a realization of something that could change even the treaty. So what I'm afraid of is that we can say the power of the council, that sometimes when of course there is all the institutional triangle and when the Commission proposes its new laws, the Council and the Parliament have to approve. And I'm afraid of what the Council how the Council could react on this, because I believe that the member states right now are not, but even the citizens, I think that populism is back in Europe, and the populism is another word to say, we can say nationalism, and I believe that right now there are not the conditions. I'm afraid of this. I think that there are not the conditions of changing the treaties or preparing a new treaty. So in this, I'm really pessimistic. I of course hope that these proposals will lead to a change of the treaties, because I also participated and I really believe in this. But at the same time, I believe that today there are not the conditions. We have to really work on the very basis, and there is something that needs to be changed. And of course, the Conference of the Future of Europe is a start, but there are many problems that need to be solved. Otherwise, the treaties will not be changed.
Thank you very much, Barbara.
If you just allow me, just a little comment. The important thing was not only the conference on the future of Europe, was in the situation it was taking place. That was during the pandemic, and the pandemic changed everything on the perspective that what Europe can make for the citizens if we work together. So that is the real frame where we should break all the changes.
Changed our perception. Yes, I think it changed really our perception, and we were working, we were going toward the right direction. So I believe that we started to understand that there are other global problems such as climate change, pandemics, global pandemics, and there are global problems that the European Union can really deal with, and this is the way in which the pandemic actually changed our vision. But at the same time, I think that the war in Europe rechanged completely our understanding of the world, because I believe that we focused. Of course, we focused on the war in Europe, and we started to lose touch with the global dimension. So we started to focus on traditional security problems, losing touch with these global problems. So I believe that this, and I believe that the pandemic triggered a process that was actually post-Westphalian in nature, because we were looking at problems that were not only included in the traditional understanding of security, which I believe that the European Union is more able to deal with these kind of problems. So the pandemic or climate change and so on and so forth.
Thank you very much. Henri, you introduced this debate. Do you want to say a few words to close it?
Yes, no, I will be, of course, just to thank very much in name of Jean Monnet Association of the participants, friend Dariusz and Barbara, for her excellent work, and I think we come to the heart of what is the community method. That means that we see that the European Union process comes to a kind of deadlock, kind to what we say in French, une impasse. Because we can't go further with the intergovernmental Westphalian method. We can't go further in a lot of very key issues, like this issue, as Dariusz mentioned, eventuality, the big threat of a Third World War. But we see that in case of emergency, the intergovernmental cooperation is, I would say, useless, not effective. And this is why, after the Second World War, the first, and but mainly the second, Jean Monnet, Robert Schuman, and the others, but Jean Monnet invented the community method. It's the only way, and he already invented that method during the war. It was the way to coordinate the effort of our allies against the Nazis. It's only when you identify a common goal and when you create a task force to manage that in the name of all, in the name of the community, not in the name of one, but you can make progress. And now we are facing that situation, and we see that the traditional Westphalian intergovernmental don't work. It just don't work. It's just a question of a systemic question, not a political. It's a systemic. And I don't like it so with this opposition between federal and not federal, not just a question of concept, it's just a concept of to be efficient, if you want to be efficient. And now we see that NATO is efficient because NATO works in the fact that in fact there is one at the top is the US decide for the others and the others follow. So this is efficient. But we don't want that in the European Union. We want something where everybody will have his say. And the only way, it's all blocked, and we have intergovernmental since hundreds of years, or we have a community method to make the things forward. And I think our message, very strong message, thanks to Barbara's excellent article, will be that we are now in a post-Westphalian world in Europe, in the post-Westphalian Europe, and we still continue to work on defense policy in the way of the last centuries. So it has to be changed, and it must be changed very concrete. So I think this debate has put the milestone, small stone, forward, I hope, some solution. So I'm, as I say, Jean Monnet, nous sommes ni pessimistes ni optimistes, nous sommes déterminés. So we are determined to go forward.
Thank you, Henri. So let's hope that the Jean Monnet method gets more supporters, more and more through across Europe. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Dariusz.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you, Henri.
Thank you very much.
Let's close this debate.
Thank you, Peggy. Good job, Peggy.
Bye.